This podcast contains explicit content and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Don't say we didn't warn you.
Hello, my name is Madison,
And I'm Hannah.
and you are listening to Who's Knocking?
Yet another true crime podcast.
Hello.
We're back.
Yeah, so this is a part 2 to the Herb. No, it's definitely Herb Baumeister.
Not the boy, sorry.
Yeah, it's American. So if you did not listen to part 1, I highly suggest that you do. That is the killing aspect. This is definitely a whole different aspect of the case in general, but it would just be way better if you listen to part 1.
I have no idea what to expect from this. So Herb's dead.
Herb is dead. He killed himself.
Yep. After a peanut butter sandwich in Canada, as one does.
Yep. And the family no longer lives at Fox Hollow Farms. It returned to the owners who had sold it to them or had leased it to them or whatever their scenario was.
Okay.
And now I just want to give a little preemptive talk here. This is my first little delve into a paranormal case. We're talking ghosts here, etc. So I'm a huge skeptic of all this type of thing.
I'm a believer.
And Hannah's a pretty hardcore believer. And now I'm mostly just skeptical because I've never experienced.
Yes, until you experience. Exactly. I was totally a skeptic, and then I experienced a few just blatant hauntings. Couldn't really be anything else.
Yeah, see.
But I feel you. I was kind of like that too.
And maybe we'll do a little video or something, and Hannah can talk about her paranormal experiences. I think we should save that for its own thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Personally, I would love nothing more than to have a paranormal experience.
You are the only person. Oh, please.
Well, but because then I'd be like, I know,
yeah.
you know, and I especially since we started this podcast, I live in a building that's probably built in the 70s or something. I'm I think that's pretty new for a haunting. I don't know. I doubt that anybody has died or in any of the apartments that I've lived in. I've lived in multiple in this complex. But it's every time I'm in the elevator by myself, I'm like, anyone? Yeah, exactly. So I actively seek out paranormal experiences. I have listened to many people who have sat and claimed that they have had paranormal experiences. I'm sure maybe some people genuinely believe that to be true. I'm sure all of them genuinely believe it to be true. If I'm gonna go out on a limb, maybe some of them are true. I take you at your word, but in my heart of hearts, I think that there's probably a logical explanation for it.
I totally hear that. I think that it's one of those things where you can't know for sure necessarily, because I mean, I've heard more extreme things than others. People told me they woke up with scrapes on them and saw ghosts and stuff, and it's well, how did that happen? Mine weren't necessarily so extreme, but you just feel it in the moment. Not to get too much into it, but I felt something poke me in the back one time, and it's it was a very clear feeling.
Oh, that's so interesting because that literally happens in this story.
Yeah, so that happened to me, and I thought it was the dog. I turned around, the dog's way across the room. No, it yeah. So
yeah, I hadn't mentioned it in my notes, but I will tell they're. So okay, I'll just get into it.
So Madison's a skeptic. I'm a believer, but we're gonna talk about a haunting.
But I want to be a believer. I just I can't. It's not truthful for me to say that I am, because at this point in my life, I just haven't been haunted yet.
I hope you are never haunted.
Okay, but I want to meet a just nice ghost. There's some nice ghosts.
Yeah,
and you'll even see there's a big mix in here. Yeah. So most of the stuff that I got, and even in the first part, was from this book.
Ooh, that looks cool.
It's called The Horrors of Fox Hollow Farm.
Holy shit.
And it's written by Richard Estep with Robert Graves, and you will meet Robert Graves very soon. But Richard Estep is a paranormal researcher, a paranormal tracker, whatever you call them.
Or
The
job.
people who like, it's not his day job. His day job is
Okay. No,
to be, yeah, is to be. Well, and he even says like most paranormal, I forget what they call it, but paranormal researchers or
yeah.
paranormal researchers. He's like, most of us have day jobs because like no one's paying us to do this.
Yeah.
Like we just like it. But like that's a pretty cool thing to do.
It's so cool, yeah.
But he wrote most of the book. He had gone out to Fox Hollow Farms because he wanted to look into it, and after hearing stories, and yes. So, and I guess I'll get more into him as the story goes on.
Okay.
So here we go.
I'm ready.
In 2006, Robert and Vicki Graves, Robert Graves is the co-writer of this book, were searching for their dream home. They were horse people, and it was their dream to live in a home that could also house their horses. The thing was, at this time and where they were looking, this kind of land and property in the area was very expensive. One day, Robert came across a listing for a huge Tudor-style home with its own stable, among many other amazing features, such as a pool. And the property was very close to where they were currently living in Indiana, near Indianapolis, in Hamilton County.
Oh, this sounds familiar.
And on top of it, the property was listed at $2.8 million. $2.8 million is a lot of money, but judging on what this house looked like, it was well below market value, well below anything that they were looking at in the area.
Yeah, why is that?
They thought, something's up here, but like, let's take a look because it looks like a good deal. So Robert called up a friend of his who's a listing agent and asked to set up a viewing. When Robert and Vicki arrived on the property, so there's a huge gate that like there's a huge winding drive that leads down, and the gate was padlocked. And they're like, okay, that's really weird because it indicated that nobody was currently living there. And they found this unusual. So they were like, dude, what's up? Why is no one living here? And he was like, okay, remember the guy who killed all those gay guys a couple years back and left their bodies to rot on his property?
Oh, God.
Well, this is that property.
I mean, it's good to be upfront about it.
Yeah, and well, I think I don't know if this varies state to state. I don't know what what everything is, but I'm pretty sure you'd have to disclose something like that. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, you fucking should.
Yeah, so the Graves took this in, and they're like, "Okay, we're still here. We're here anyway. Like, let's take a look at it and
wow, that was
decide anyway." No. So despite its many obvious issues, everything was completely overgrown. There were raccoons living in the attic, and I mean, approximately 20 people were killed and left to rot on the property. Yeah. They were like, this is actually super cool. It's a really great home. The people, I think it was in the 70s that the couple who first built it, and I tried to look up some of the history, and I've had a really hard time finding like the main history of it. There was a little bit in this book, but this like obviously wealthy couple bought the land, and then they built everything from scratch, and they spared no expense. They had glass brought in from Italy and this and that. Like it was.
I mean, it sounds nice before the murders.
Yeah, it was top notch, and it was a really, really nice home, really well made. The murder, yeah.
The murders ruin it. Like, don't live there. Don't move there.
Yeah, and on top of that, it was like their perfect location. It would house their horses. It was in the middle of a huge horse field. Like it was perfect. So they went home, and he describes, he's like, we went home and we sat down with our family. They had I think 2 boys, or they had a number of children. I'm pretty sure it was 2 boys. And they all discussed like, is this something that we could live with? Is like the fact that people were murdered here, can we live with that? And they were like, yeah, we can.
Oh God. Yeah, no big deal.
They're like, yeah, it's fine. I know at least the wife was like from a very scientific background. Like, there were not people who like believed in that type of thing.
Right. But even if you don't believe in ghosts, like that's, you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, maybe.
Really?
I don't know. Like, as if sick property, good deal.
Sick property, yeah, that's true. But The
And like,
murders.
if you don't believe in ghosts anyway,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. So they were like, yeah, I think we could live with it. Like, let's put an offer. So they put in an offer, and the people were like, hell no, that's like ridiculously low. No. And they like kind of did a couple back and forth, and then it kind of fizzled out, and years went by, and finally the people came back to them and were like, you're the only people who made us an offer. So
No one wants to fucking live there.
yeah, nobody wanted, clearly. So they ended up settling, and I don't know what the actual amount was, but it was basically they just paid for the land. They got it on a really, really good deal.
Uh-huh.
So the house itself did need extensive work, but they were excited about it. And the guy, Robert Graves, talks extensively about, and this is where I talked about with her, they had let it get into a kind of disarray, and he's like, this property requires a lot of work. Like, they both have full-time jobs. Obviously they have some money, but like they work on this house constantly all the time, especially because they have horses. I believe they have horses, so like the gating, like to keep up with fencing on a property that large is intense.
For sure.
And he's like, mowing the lawn takes 6 hours. So like
much
just
more.
that. And they had like raccoons in the attic, like things were left in shambles. The first night that the family spent in the home, they all slept in one room because they're like, I don't know.
You have to do that,
Well, yeah, clearly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm
kind of torn. I'm kind of torn, but also like we'll talk about that more at the end, because it's like I have a bias because I know the story. I think if I didn't know, then I would more agree with you. So the first night seemed totally fine. The worst thing about the property really was that people just kept constantly showing up to come and see the murder house. It had been empty for so long, so people had been coming and taking a look at it for so long, knowing its history, that if they didn't lock the gate properly, they would have people just showing up on their doorstep all the time.
Yeah, like we did at
Yeah,
that other house.
exactly. Yeah. Tune in.
We get it.
Yeah, and that house was empty. So
yeah,
reasonable. If it's empty, whatever. Exactly. So after a bit of research, they found out that Fox Hollow Farm was listed on a bunch of websites that listed haunted buildings. But that's not all. So the first, might we say, paranormal experience happened to Vicky. Vicky being the mother and wife of the family. Vicky was a scientist by profession, as I mentioned, and she was not at all a believer in spirits or ghosts. But one day she was down by the pool vacuuming, and all of a sudden the vacuum switched off. She turned around and she saw that the plug had been pulled out of the wall. She was like, all right, okay, maybe I'll pull it out. She went and put it back in. A few seconds later, she's vacuuming, and the same thing happened. And when she turned around, the cord was at least a foot away from the wall, and the cord still had some slack in it. So she's like, that's weird. I didn't pull it out. Okay. So then she went and she put it back in the wall. And before she had even turned around, she claims that she saw the plug come out and fly across the room by itself.
Holy shit. How did that happen?
That's what she says. During this whole incident, Vicky claimed that she could feel a presence in the room. It's like someone was there.
Right. Wow.
A few months into living there, Robert became aware that one of his coworkers, that he kept showing up late to work, and it was because he lived super far from the workplace. I don't know what the workplace was, but Robert offered to rent him the apartment above his garage. It was approximately 1,200 square feet with everything he needed, including a separate entrance to the main house. And even after hearing about the home's history, Joe LeBlanc was interested. He even thought it sounded kind of cool. Now, history of this little apartment above the garage, I believe, though I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure that this is remember when I told you that Herb and his wife had divorced, but he still lived in a guest house on the property? Right. I'm pretty sure this is that.
So was that like where the murders were happening, probably?
We don't know. but we know that Herb spent a lot of time in there.
Oh God. I mean, there's no way he wasn't up to some creepy shit.
Well, he seemed to be just like a pretty creepy individual.
Yeah.
So I'm sure wherever he was,
Yeah.
like nastiness was going on.
Oh God.
So the first night that he slept there, Joe, he had the most vivid and horrifying dream that he's ever had in his whole life.
Oh
In the
my fucking
dream,
God.
he was all it was him running through the woods that were behind the house, just in fear of his life, just running for his life. And it was so vivid and so lifelike that partway through he woke up but still thought he was in the dream. So like he got up and started running for his life and smacked his head on the doorway and
Holy
fell
shit.
down. And like that's when he became fully awake. Next, a few days later, Vicky returned home from work, and while chatting outside with Robert, she got distracted by the sight of a young man far back in the woods, and he was just walking casually. He was wearing a red shirt and blue jeans, and she was about to call out to him, thinking that he was like a random person who showed up. But then when she got a better look, she realized that he had no legs. His legs were transparent.
Whoa.
And yeah, and all of a sudden, he was gone. Then
A
Joe,
ghost?
yeah, well, he had no legs and he was
Yeah.
standing, so that's the implication.
Okay.
So then Joe had an encounter of his own with the red shirt ghost. He was out for one of his nightly walks with his dog Fred, and it was they were in their own property, so he was not leashed. And Fred started to sense something and he began to bark. And that's when Joe saw the red shirt guy. He drifted very ghost like into the woods, and Fred ran after him deep into the woods. And Joe was like, oh, fuck. And he's like, oh, shit, now I have to go running in the woods.
Yeah.
Which,
Gotta get
so
Fred back.
he does go running in the woods. And as he does, he's like, oh my God, this was my dream. This is exactly what happened in my dream.
That's scary.
So he got deeper and deeper into the woods till he ran into a red shirt guy who was just like casually standing there, and there was Fred. And I guess him and Fred ended up getting terrified of what was happening, and then they just ran as fast as they could back to the house, and they were fine. After that, Joe again, and so a lot of these things seem to happen to Joe, and later we'll meet some other people, and a lot of people think that Joe, what do they call them? They call them people who have like a very psychic energy or who can see spirits.
Like a medium?
No, just like the way that it's described by Richard Estep, who wrote the book, is that some people are just more naturally inclined to see ghosts.
Yeah.
Than other people. And like as we'll see, Robert, he doesn't really get haunted at all. He doesn't see any of it or anything. But Vicky seems to see a lot of things, and so does Joe. So another occasion, Joe was watching TV in his living room, and he heard a knock at the door. And the knock kept going as Joe yelled that he was coming, and then it just kept getting faster and louder, and he's like, what the hell? And he opens the door and nobody's there. But at the time he began to feel a presence in the room, which was described exactly the way that Vicky had described during her vacuum incident. And Fred clearly sensed it as well. On yet another occasion in the same room, but at night, Joe or I guess these were both at night, because he claims all these knocking incidents happen at 1:45 every single time.
Weird.
So another occasion, I guess he was in bed at this time. He was woken up by the knocking. Again, the knocking grew louder and faster. When Joe opened the door and looked at the heavy metal knocker, he was shocked to see that the knocker, which would lay like this, was raised to a 90-degree angle by itself. And then it did another knock and dropped. Terrified, Joe slammed the door shut, but then he says that he was looking at the door and the door handle twisted And then all of a sudden, he turned around to peer into the apartment, and he claims that he saw a ghost of a man staring him right in the face.
Oh, that's so scary.
But what he noticed about this ghost, so he says, is that the ghost had a look of like sheer panic on his face.
Oh,
The
no.
ghost was terrified, and the ghost ran away.
Oh, so okay, friendly ghost at least. Or
Well,
not friendly, but like not like
like
murder.
victim ghost.
Yeah.
So
Preferable to murdery ghost.
yeah, I'd say so. Although, like,
Sure.
I feel like somebody who's like terrified would be like really annoying.
I mean,
I don't know.
yes.
Like, you're knocking constantly. Like, could you not?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
at night?
That's true.
Get out of here.
That's true. It would be disruptive.
Poor Joe had yet another horrifying experience. And this time, this was terrifying, and this was in the pool.
Oh my God, the mannequin pool?
Yes. So there was one evening or night or whatever, and he was hanging out in the basement pool with Robert and Vicky's two sons, who they never named here. I feel like they don't want to be named, whatever.
Fair enough.
Joe was swimming in the pool, and he was like in near the middle of the pool, at least 20 feet away from the rest of the guys, when all of a sudden he felt two hands wrap around his neck and pull him under the water. And then just as quick as they were there, they were gone. And Joe resurfaced. He was terrified. He was looking around. The other guys they didn't really notice that it all happened. And he's like, okay, he's trying to rationalize what happened. He's trying to figure out what it was, but there was nobody around him. Then all of a sudden, again, the hands grab him and pull him under the water. And they hold him there for a little bit longer. And he's thrashing. He's trying to get out. And then they release him. And the other guys noticed at the time, and they thought he was horsing around, but he resurfaced and like jumped out of the water, and he's like, everybody get out of the pool, and like told them what happened. And he never went back into the water.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
If that actually happened.
Yeah, one experience like that is enough.
Yeah, and this is like his 5th or 6th experience at this point. So
it would,
he seems to be loving it. Like he's like, you're just renting it. Like, get out.
Yeah, you could leave at any time.
But like, it's so interesting. Like, all this stuff is happening to him, but like nothing's happening to Robert. And like some stuff is happening to Vicky. And I don't know about the kids, really.
That is a little fishy. I mean, it could just be the location, like the apartment.
Yeah, well, that's I think what the speculation is that there's certain parts in the house that are more haunted than others, like the pool area being one, that apartment being another. And I'll get into Robert's bathroom later. Another night, Joe was sitting at his computer desk when he noticed that all of the kitchen knives had been removed from the knife block and had been placed neatly in a lineup in the sink.
That's scary.
Yeah. Unless he did it and just forgot.
Yeah, but would you really forget that?
I don't know. Yeah, it seems fishy. He looked around and he noticed on one of the walls that there were a bunch of notches in the wall. And at the time, he's like, I couldn't remember if I had ever seen them before or if they were new. And he started to think that so he made the assumption that the terrified ghost that was in the room had been killed in this room and had been stabbed multiple times against the wall, which is what created the notches. And Joe has a lot of theories. A lot of people have a lot of theories. So Joe had seen some paranormal ghost hunting shows before, and he decided that he would try an experiment. He would record his own EVP, which stands for electronic voice phenomenon. It's basically when you just record the room and like you ask questions and stuff, and then you play it back and see if anybody had answered.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this is a technique that a lot of these paranormal researchers use. And the main thing is like they say that there's a lot of false positives, obviously. They're like, if there's any other electronics on nearby, you can get like some weird interference, or like people just kind of read something into nothing.
Yeah, for sure. It's just the creepy factor of it. Like, you could definitely project that you're kind of hearing stuff, but
exactly. And now this recording, actually, I think it can be found on YouTube. I'll see if I can find it.
Who keeps walking in the kitchen?
So he turned on a recorder, turned all the electronics off, and started asking questions. And he began to sense that he was not alone, and Fred began to growl too. And he ended the recording and began to listen to it back. And it did appear that he got one answer. The question was, is there anyone here with him, and who could be heard walking around the kitchen at night? So I guess he claimed he heard footsteps in the kitchen at night. And a male voice answered in what sounded like, quote, "the married one," end quote.
Oh.
Now, after they started doing a lot of research into the victims, and Robert Graves and the whole family ended up doing extensive research into what exactly happened, it seemed that none of the victims, at least none of the identified victims, were married. The only one of the people who was identified in this whole situation and was married was Herb.
Right.
So this specific incident and his general feeling led Joe to believe that Herb's ghost was at least one of the ghosts around. And like he would get very antagonistic with this ghost that he assumed was Herb.
Yeah.
So the guy who wrote the book, his name is Richard Estep. Him and his whole team of researchers came out to Fox Hollow Farms to, like, they brought all their equipment and like did all these tests and whatever and interviewed everyone. And they Joe ended up coming out, and they were really excited because it seemed like he was the one person who like ended up seeing the most ghosts, or like was brought them out the most. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, when like some people seem to like draw more out, or like at least see more, or
Right.
whatever. And they were with him in one of the rooms off the pool, which seems like it's one of the major places to experience paranormal activity in that house. And like Joe was like, "Come out here, Herb, like fuck you," like, yeah, and he was like really antagonizing to this ghost. But I think later other people established that they didn't think that Herb's ghost was haunting the property. They thought that he was somewhere else, and like sometimes just came back to like Joe, whatever. It's super unclear, and everyone has a lot of opinions, but Joe changes his mind later.
Interesting.
Okay, where am I? So the family had been living at Fox Hollow Farms for a while now, and it seemed like they were definitely having paranormal experiences. Joe seemed to be getting the worst of it, like I said, and the family was getting reached out to various ghost hunters, TV people, etc. And they did allow various TV crews into their house, as I said, and because more than just the Richard guy, like there's lots of interviews with Robert found on YouTube. I watched an interview with Robert, not from this Richard fellow, and he said of the adults in the house, he seemed to be the one who least experienced paranormal activity. Both him and Vicky considered themselves to be skeptical of this sort of stuff at first. And as I said before, they had a few people come to do psychic readings and check things out. So those like there's paranormal researchers, and then there's people who are like mediums and psychics and whatever. And he said the first round of people who did that sort of stuff, he was very skeptical of them, because he said that everything that they were saying could be gathered through research. He's like, there's nothing that they said that I think that they just came up with themselves.
There are definitely some people out there who are fraudulent in this line of work.
Absolutely. I think that's like the major thing that plagues this industry, is that
Right.
I'm sure probably the majority of people are frauds.
Right.
And then it's like up to you to like
Same with
decide what you
psychics.
believe. Yeah, exactly. And like this is what these people are, like psychics or mediums. I don't know necessarily what the difference is. I think some people claim to be both. I don't know. So since his wife was pretty insistent that she saw things, Robert was interested to go a bit further. So he contacted somebody that he really trusted and asked if there were any psychics who they could verify knew nothing about the murders. And he requested that the psychic that was chosen not be told the address, that they were just like brought here and not be told anything so that they couldn't research anything.
Makes sense.
And an arrangement was made. This friend who I guess was into this type of thing, like I guess he kind of like delved into this whole community of people who are into this type of thing. And I think probably it's kind of easy to do that when you like live in a haunted house, like
Yeah.
really willing to talk to you.
They're lining up.
Yeah. So before this psychic came by, Robert was talking to his wife, and after some probing, she reluctantly told him about one spot that she was experiencing a lot of. She didn't experience anything specific, but she's like, I go in there and I just can't. I hate being in there. I get a feeling that I'm not wanted in there and I shouldn't be in there. And this coming from a woman who's like pretty skeptical, I think is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because she hadn't told Robert. She was like, she just kept it to herself because she didn't think that he would believe her. And she's like, there's just no point in talking about it. And this was his bathroom. And it's interesting because there was multiple people, visitors in the house who also got that feeling, all of them women. And people speculated at first that it was that Herb's ghost just hated women.
Right.
So the psychic came by and she toured the house inside and out, and with no prompting, she just started to say things. And she said that there were at least 4 spirits and that a lot of people had been killed and buried there. She mentioned that most of them seemed to be pretty chill. And she explained to Robert that oftentimes when people die in violent ways, they don't quite make it over to wherever they're going.
Right.
And that oftentimes they get stuck in between our world and the afterlife. And unprompted, she made particular mention of Robert's bathroom. She said that that space specifically was being used as a portal for these spirits to travel between our world and the other side. And it's like they're kind of stuck going back and forth. They don't get to stay over there.
That's crazy.
And so that seemed to make a whole lot of sense to him.
It does kind of make sense.
But it's interesting because he's like, I go in there and I feel nothing.
Right.
But other people, random guests,
But only women.
did. Yeah. So it seemed that over the years, there were many more credible spiritual people having been to Fox Hollow Farms, and like Robert seems to like have become quite good friends with a couple of them. And most of them mentioned that there's a lot of spirits on Fox Hollow Farm, but a lot of them are actually Native Americans who died like this was their land before and it was stolen from them.
Right.
And now they're just like chilling there because they're upset that they had their land taken from them and whatever.
I mean, yeah.
I don't think it was like necessarily a burial
Totally.
ground or anything, but it was their land, and we all know what went down. For this book, Richard spoke to a number of psychics and medium type people, and most of them suggested by Robert and who appeared to be pretty credible. But he was also able to talk to Tony Harris, who we don't know his real name, but remember,
Yeah.
we all recall who Tony Harris was. And this was a very interesting and candid conversation. And there were a few aspects of his story that are very different now than what was understood of what he said in the 90s. I don't know what exactly he said in the 90s. I don't know if like people twisted his words or what. But this is like, it's so interesting. And okay, I'll just get into it. But Tony, at this time, and this was very recent, he says that he met Herb at the bar that night while he was looking at the missing persons poster. But now Tony says that he was actually undergoing a little bit of like some sort of spiritual awakening himself and realizing his own psychic abilities. He said that when he saw Herb, he described him as having like big energetic blank spots in him.
But he had the gut feeling that, like, and it was him.
Yeah, he said that it was like pieces of him were missing. He was like, when you look at people, usually they're like a solid entity, and he's like, there were literal blank spots in him, like a piece of Swiss cheese, like pieces that people have that they just take for granted. It's like he was missing, like, and like where I fill in the blanks, I'm like, "Ooh, he's missing like empathy and whatever," like,
Right.
you know what I mean? And seeing that and seeing the way that he was looking at the poster, he said he just knew that Herb was the guy. Excuse me. So Tony said that he approached Herb and he was super pushy and aggressive, and he figured that if he was the real killer, like I said, he could probably be pushed into a physical confrontation. But as we know, that was not the case, and Herb was really chill. He went back to Herb's place, like his original story, but now he also claims that when he got there, Herb parked in a very specific way, such a way that his front tires were like angled a little bit up and right towards the window, and in such a way that his headlights, when they shone, it would have like made a big light in the window. And he believes that at the time Herb had an accomplice that he was trying to signal to, and the alleged accomplice was not there, and Herb apparently made like an actual um he like said something to effect of like, people are just not there when you need them or whatever. Like he said something to allude to the fact that he was
Weird.
trying to signal to somebody, which is weird because why would you say that out loud? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's fishy to me. Um, and he claims that it is this accomplice who he never names by name, but he claims that their spirit still haunts Fox Hollow Farms to this day. And he says that this man, for whatever reason, was not home that night, and Herb had an outburst about it when he realized it. And Tony said the man murdered a bunch of women on the property and that he died 10 years ago. And he calls his spirit Sounds Like Joe.
Okay.
Don't know why, but this is all stuff he claims. And it's very interesting because the guy, uh, Richard, he talks about this conversation that he had with Tony, and he's like, Tony is a really cool, like, charismatic guy. He sat down and he talked about everything. He was super candid and open. And he's like, he even finds a lot of this stuff kind of weird and questions him about a lot of it. But at the same time, he's like, he didn't want to give his real name. He doesn't want any notoriety for it. He doesn't want any money. He didn't get any money for doing this. And he, like, after learning all this stuff, he still went to the police right away. Like, he still wanted to catch the killer. And like you'll see, it gets even weirder.
This is so weird already. Like, why would he lie, right? Because he doesn't seem to.
It's so weird. Because a lot of people, like, if you're gonna lie about something like that, it's because like you want people to listen to you. Like maybe he just wants someone to listen. But a lot of people, I think it's more for notoriety.
Definitely.
And this is not like, nobody knows who this person actually is. So at this time, there was no real evidence to support the theory, and Tony seems to be the only one putting it forth about the accomplice. Tony continued his story, and he claims that while he was inside with Herb that first night, he felt that the house was already full of shadowy spirits and that they protected him from Herb's many attempts to kill him that night, specifically urging him to stay out of the changing room, which was a room right off the pool. Herb kept trying to lure him in there, offering him, saying like, "Do you have to go to the bathroom? It's right in here." And apparently Tony was like, "No, I'm just gonna pee in the pool." Because he's like, "I'm not going in there." Because he claims that literally he saw ghosts being like, "Don't go in there, like stay out."
Yeah. Thank you,
Um,
guys. Helpful.
yeah, and he apparently kept trying to ask him to do cocaine in there, but he refused. And so Tony has become good friends with Richard, and he goes back to Fox Hollow Farms, or he has gone back on a number of occasions. And he claimed that he actually, when he went into the pool room, which is full of lockers, that the family just uses to like put their stuff in when they go in the pool, he says that when he went back in there, like he walked in there, and then all of a sudden, like all the locks opened and closed, and he's like, it's like a prank, like,
Yeah, that's creepy.
which is pretty crazy. Tony also says that Herb did not physically assault him in the way that he originally said, like about the whole choking incident. He said that he only said that so that the FBI would come out and investigate the deaths. He felt that he wanted to kill him, and after getting to know him, he felt Herb wanted to try to groom him to be his accomplice.
Interesting.
So he's saying that he came out to the property with Herb intended to kill him, and like after he like wouldn't, which is crazy because it's like he had nothing to defend himself with. Like you could have just killed him,
Right.
but he claims that like ghosts like saved him from being killed by him, and then after he was like kind of survived that whole thing, which that is fishy to me because like I don't know, that just sounds weird.
It is weird.
After that, he like I guess it's his assertion that he like went with it and like kind of got to know him, and then Herb ended up liking him and wanting him to be the accomplice. Like that's how I understand it to be, but it is
Yeah.
a little weird.
He was saying before they were kind of hanging out, they were talking. It seemed like Herb genuinely liked him, and then he just dropped him off. But what, like, it's a stretch to be like, hey, you want to help me kill people? You know?
Well, and he says he didn't outright ask him that. That's just like the sense that he got.
Okay.
And so he also says that he actually continued a relationship with Herb afterwards and spent many other occasions at Fox Hollow Farm with Herb. And they
Oh,
had a sexual and emotional relationship. And clearly, this caused everyone to question Tony's original story
yeah.
and wonder if he knew more about Herb than he let on, maybe even about the murders. But it doesn't change the fact that he immediately reported him to police. And like, so remember, he had one of his friends was
Yeah.
killed by him, and he was looking for his murder. And he went out and like he did this whole thing, and he still claims that like he went with him because he thought that he might be the murderer, and decided that he thought he was, and reported him to police, and then gave the license and whatever. But and
Was
now
he
he's
with
claiming
him?
that yeah, they had a relationship that
Why would you
continued.
get with him? He's a murderer.
And that's what everyone was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But also he like was the reason he got caught.
Yeah, true.
So it's like it's very interesting. And Rich, fuck, I just keep getting mixed up with the Richard and the Robert. Richard, who wrote the book, he seemed to like be grappling with this very thing when he was talking to him, but it seemed that he was very, I think that he really liked Tony. I think
Yeah.
that he,
Tony was
after
sharp.
talking with him, he was like they like spoke for hours. They hung out on the farm together, and they walked around together, and he explained to him all the stuff. And like I think it seems that Richard seems to me like the type of person who like believes in all this stuff. Like to me, I feel like if I had that conversation, I'd be like
You're making
way more skeptical.
Yeah.
But it just still doesn't, like, the one thing that I keep coming back to is that he ratted on him. Like
Yeah.
so Richard says that he believes that Tony did not know about, or was not involved in any of the other murders, or like didn't know that subsequent murders were happening. But I guess he still just like fell in love with this guy. And he never says the word love, but like he ended up enjoying the company of this guy who he suspected murdered his friend.
I mean, it's a deal breaker. Like, you
And
murder
also,
people.
yeah, and also alleges that there was this accomplice that he knows but won't say who it is, whose spirit still haunts the grounds. And he also says that there's like this competing spirit that is this, and this is where it got kind of really weird for me, and I was like, I don't fucking know. And it's like the spirit is like takes the form of a frog, and they like are against each other or something. It's really weird. It
It's a
seems like,
lot. I mean,
yeah, seems like a lot of people who come here like have their own theories about it. Like there's the woman with the portal theory.
right.
Joe used to think that Herb haunted the place. Now he doesn't. There's just allegedly there's a lot of spirits there, and I think they get confusing. I don't know.
I mean, I
So
believe that there's like energy left there for sure.
for sure.
But
And there's multiple people who claim they have seen this red shirt guy.
yeah.
But then people are like, the red shirt guy is not the is not a victim. He's just, a lot of people think that he's like one of the native spirits.
Right.
And I'll have to show you, we'll insert it somewhere, the EVP. There's like, I think there's actual footage of, or like audio footage of the
Like
the
the
ghost saying
yeah.
the married one, which is like decently clear
Okay.
if you're into that kind of thing. So all the names. Tony claims that he still speaks to Herb, and he speaks of Herb as two people. There's his Brian character, which is the Brian side of him, which is the side that he like really likes and is in a relationship with, and then the Herb side, his more murdery side,
God.
which is called Herb. Sorry. So the Brian side is like the good father side, the guy who's in a relationship with, the guy who's really nice. And Tony believes that Herb's spirit does not reside at Fox Hollow Farms, but that he actually spends a lot of time with Tony. And he claims that the Brian side is really remorseful, and he would really like to set things right, but he knows that he never could. And says that even during the time that Herb was alive, he really wanted to stop doing what he was doing, but he just couldn't help himself. Tony believes that Herb was haunted by a demonic force, and that's what made him commit all the murders.
That's crazy. It's so weird. It's so weird to me because, like, going back, he seemed so normal, other than the whole, like, not getting along with his wife, but, like, the good dad, going on fishing trips. So, you know.
I mean, besides the fact that he's out murdering people?
Yeah. I just mean, like, it almost does seem like there were two.
Well, and that goes back to the original diagnosis. He was diagnosed with either schizophrenia or, like, a split personality. And that is where a lot of people feel like it rings true, because he did have essentially a split personality. And I don't think they mean it in like the way that the movies make it, where it's like, I'm one person and I'm another person.
Yeah.
It's like he was able to like be one person in one realm and be another person in the other.
Yep.
And that's essentially like when you are a serial killer by night and a dad by day, that is
it's 100%. I mean, I think a lot of people have that in, you know, less murdery kind of ways, but like, you know, the role you play in different like environments. So that's crazy. Okay. So Tony said that he has two personalities. They hang out with him still. Brian.
Yeah, he like talks about Herb as if he's like still in a relationship with him, essentially.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, this guy's your buddy, but you also implicated him.
Yeah, and I think that's how he justifies his relationship, where he's like, I like the Brian side. I don't like the Herb side.
Okay, that's fair.
Or at least the Herb side is cursed by a demonic force.
Right.
So that's what he claims.
I mean, there's something going on, that's for sure.
Yeah, and in the book, there were a couple other conversations they had with different mediums. There was one guy who seemed pretty cool, and like he seemed to know a lot. And I won't get into all the different conversations because it's too much for this one podcast, but it's very interesting because the Graves family, they, now that they've had all these experiences, they say that they don't have a problem with the home, and they still really enjoy living there. And they're like, we experience things here and there, but like we know what it is, and they don't bother us. They're just, sometimes they just want to be heard. Robert still doesn't really experience much. Vicky does. And the kids are grown up. I think at the time of Richard going through with all of his paranormal people, Joe had moved out, and one of the sons had taken over the room, and they were experiencing the knocking at 1:45.
Oh my God.
And eventually the parents were like, just ignore it. They're just trying to come in. They're fine. And like but this is why at the beginning, when you were like, you would move in there, and I'm like, after the fact, like it seems like they get along pretty well with like whatever's going on. Like it seems like things work out. And Robert was taking people for tours at one point. He was like charging people to come through every now and again. And there was one of the mediums, I think, had said like they don't like having people come and just like try to look for them. Like when you're like trying to get them to come out and do stuff, a lot of the time they're like, no, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, they're like, fuck you, I'm not your puppet.
Exactly. And it's like you have to go in with a like real intention of trying to help them move over if you want them to interact with you, I guess, in a way, is what they're saying. But the family seems to like live in harmony with all the hauntings or whatever you call it.
I could see that. Like I've kind of had that before in one
Yeah.
instance.
And it sounds kind of cool. Like
Yeah,
I think that'd be pretty cool if you knew there were ghosts there and they were like kind of nice. I just wouldn't go in the pool.
Yeah, that's true. The pool's scary. But yeah, no, it's a thing. Like I think that there's like different types of energy that could be left behind. But I'm a believer in that crossing over thing, because I do think that, you know, there's some force that animates us, and that is like what crosses over. Like obviously our bodies stay on this planet, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there were some people that their theory was that there are some people who, when they die, and that one lady was saying like if you die in a violent way, you could get stuck, and then you could get stuck in a sense that like whatever happened to you just like happens in a loop, and like sometimes people run into it. You know what I mean? Like for example, the like really scared guy.
Yeah.
Like I guess the theory would be that like that guy was killed in that apartment, and like every so often at like 1:45, like he comes in and like you see that whole scene playing itself out.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it seems like a lot of these theories were like highly debated, or people had different opinions. And to me, that's where like it seems I get really skeptical, because it's like, okay, everybody's just portraying their own narrative on what they perceive they're seeing. But as with the whole poking in the back, the Richard team who came in, multiple of them, and mostly the women, kept getting poked in the back.
Yeah,
they all kept being like, somebody poked me in the back with their finger, and there was no one behind
like unmistakable. Yeah.
A lot of poking.
Yeah, it's a thing. Oh my God. I know. I think that like I've never experienced like a super, super crazy haunting, like necessarily to that extent. But the one that I've had two, like one was like a friendly one, and then one was like a not as friendly. But it wasn't unfriendly. It was just like that like thing was in a bad place, and it was just kind of like taking us all with it. It wasn't like dangerous, like it wasn't like intentional towards us, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't like trying to strangle me or anything like that, but it was still scary to be around it.
There was one time where like out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw like somebody biking really quickly, and then like I looked and there was no one there. But I just don't feel like I really saw that. I think I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I'd like to think that it was the case.
You did.
Because I really want to have seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in elementary school, there was like, I remember like the upstairs girls' bathroom was apparently haunted, and like we would go up there. I remember one time like me and my friends went up there, and
was it scary?
We're like, oh my God. And yeah, but because we were like 6 years old, and we like
I'd still be
decided
scared.
It was scary, and everyone's like, yeah, there's a wolf in there, the ghost wolf. And there was another, oh, it's so funny, there was another like in the playground on the concrete area, there's like one patch like clearly like it was dug through or whatever and filled in, and it's like a darker patch. And the story was that there was a kid who was standing on that patch that wasn't a patch at the time, and all of a sudden it just opened up and he got sucked through, and that's that patch. And so like nobody stood on that patch.
Yeah, I wouldn't, just in case.
Why even attempt it?
I know. It's with these hauntings, it's like it's just hard to know, because it's like somebody's just saying this happened, and obviously like is the story of multiple people, if that matches up, can that be taken as evidence? It's hard to say. And I think that because we live in such a like rational mindset, it's automatically something where we're kind of like trying to find an explanation for it.
Yeah, and Richard describes a lot of his work as like when they experience something, they like do everything they can to try to figure out rationally what happened. And it's the instances where they just cannot think of anything, where they have to that's where they assume that it is some sort of paranormal activity.
That's cool. That's cool they do it that way. Okay,
And
so
it makes
that,
sense.
yeah, that
And
really took her.
yeah, and I just want to also point out, like, the way that Robert, I really like the way that he kind of goes through everything, because he's like, he doesn't experience stuff himself, but like he believes his wife, that she's experiencing all these things. And like the way that he like systematically goes through everything is exactly the way that I do it. Like the way, like, he had all these psychics on, and he's like, I don't quite buy that this is new information. And then he's like, he goes out, he tries to find a really good psychic. He's like, okay, this person has to not know about anything. She has to not be told where she's going, like put her. And I'm like, yeah, that's how you do it. That's how
Yeah.
you. So, kudos to him. I enjoyed his his systematic, his process. I liked it.
That is cool. And I do think that there are like really legit psychics out there, because not even in the sense that like they have an ability that we don't have. It's just that they can have like a level of awareness of things, if that makes sense. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure you had gut feelings about things before. I think most of us have experienced that.
See, I'm so confused about these like gut. Okay, so like people all the time talk about like they had like a premonition. Like, I met this one makeup artist. I was on a show this one time, and this makeup artist was telling me that like she claims that she has all these dreams that like predict what's gonna happen, and like on
That's
many occasions, she's like in her dreams, like she predicted that her sister-in-law was pregnant, and she predicted the name that she was gonna give the baby, and all this stuff, and then like it all came true. And what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So a lot of people claim that like they like have like a premonition about something, and then it's gonna happen or whatever. So like every time like a family member of mine like goes out, or like, like Chris is out late at night, I'm always like, he's gonna die in a car accident. Or like I make all these things up, and they're never right.
All the time.
I just worry constantly. And like every time like my parents drive to the cottage, I'm like, this is the last time I'm gonna see them alive. And it's never right. I always think everyone's
like
gonna die, and they
That's
never
just, like,
do.
Too many murder and like crime things.
I know, but it's like fucking with like, maybe I could have some real premonitions, and like they just get fucked up because all this like murder stuff I listen to. I just always like, every time someone's gone, I'm like, all right, better get ready for their funeral.
Oh my god. Well, it's good to be prepared, I guess.
So dramatic.
It is hard to know sometimes. Like, there's times where I can't tell, like, am I having a gut feeling or not? But I do think there's something to be said about intuition and like feeling. Like, one time this like creepy dude followed me home. I was fine, thank God. But I could like feel that someone was following me. I did not know. I didn't see him before I felt it. And then this was actually so creepy because I like looked behind me and nobody was there. He was like hiding. And then when I looked back later, he was there. And he had stopped me to talk to me earlier. It was so fucking creepy. I was fine. I got away. Like, it was still traumatic. I'm over it now, thank God. But like, but I genuinely like felt it. It's indescribable in a logical sense, because there was no reason. I wasn't scared of necessarily being followed. Maybe I was a little like kind of like whatever, but I'd walked home alone multiple times before. So I was kind of like, and then I just got this like feeling that somebody was following me.
Yeah, I have not spent a lot of time like, now that I have kids and like whatever, like I don't.
Yeah.
When I used to like live downtown and be a young person, like
that was like, what it was for me too. Yeah, it was
working in restaurants. Like I like would walk by myself at night all the time, and like never felt any fear. Like obviously I felt the odd like guy like would walk up to me or whatever.
Yeah.
But I started taking a pottery class that we now know about, and I walk there because it's up the street. But now I have to walk home at like 9:30 at night by myself, and like I like it. I like walking by myself, but I'm so paranoid now, like way more than I used to be. And like the area that I live in is like 1,000 times safer and more like chill than where I've ever lived. And it's just like I can just feel people walking up behind me, and but mind you, I'm literally always listening to a true crime podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't help.
Yeah, I know it does. I think that's what it kind of is, because we were like primed to think about it.
Yeah. I 1,000% do it to myself.
Definitely. You have to, you have to have like a certain cutoff time where you're like, all right, now it's only Drag Race and like nice things, nice light things. No?
No,
Okay.
no. How would I ever fall asleep?
Yeah.
I can't fall asleep to Drag Race because I have to see who lip syncs for their life
Yeah, that's true.
and who has to sashay away.
Nice murder podcast. Wake up to some
Yeah.
nice calm nightmares.
Yeah. Oh, I had a really disgusting nightmare. I can't even see it on here. It's disgusting.
Okay, tell
But
me
anyway,
later.
that's for another time. So I rated this 5 out of 10.
Oh, for the overall.
Yeah, and because, well, you tell me what you're rating and I'll tell you why.
Okay, I feel like I'm definitely having that thing where this crime couldn't not happen to me, like the deaths, because it was obviously targeting men. So I feel like it makes it seem less scary to me, but I think I would still put it at like at least 6, because to me the kid, like the fact that the kids are just on the property playing with the dead, skull, that's terrifying to me. The fact that it's like he was this upstanding citizen for the most part, living his life, but secretly murdering, so many deaths. The haunting part, like I agree with you that I'm kind of like unclear on what really went down there. But I do for sure believe that it's haunted. I mean,
It seemed like, of all places, it seems like that would be a pretty haunted place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like nothing about this, and like I think it's because of the person I am and the stuff that I listen to, and the fact that I would not be a victim of this person. But like it really doesn't frighten me.
Well,
but I acknowledge.
There's also not the details of like, because it's like, okay, these people were missing and then we found the fragments of their body. So we don't really know what happened in between. And I'm sure it was like insanely disgusting.
Well, yeah, because like if you think back to like, for example, the Israel Keys episode we did, like we had like a play-by-play of what happened to what was her name? Samantha. And like that really played into like how horrifying that was, like how she was like led to believe she was gonna be okay, and then he raped her and like all like you have all those details, which is what we don't get from this case. You're totally right. And I think that's why it's not as disturbing to me as something where like, because if we could fill in our own blanks, but I don't generally like to do that. I don't like to talk about things that we don't really have evidence for. But yeah, what happened to these men, like it really does get kind of glossed over because we don't know the details. And I'm sure for every single one of them is absolutely horrifying and terrible. And, it's kind of nicer not to know, but also if we did know, I think the rating would probably get like pretty, it would be higher.
Yeah, agreed.
So I put it at a 5, you put it at a 6, and I think that's reasonable. I'm interested to hear what other people have to say.
Yeah, me too. I think that with the ghost aspect of it, like that part isn't as bad in a sense. I mean, there were some creepy things, but it's like you said, it was a relatively coexisting haunting, which is not too bad.
It's especially because the way that it kind of ended up, it ended in a way that like they lived in harmony with whatever was there. So like to me, that's like kind of a nice.
I know, it's like
paranormal
a friend.
Yeah, like the ideal paranormal activity in your home.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's that. That's the that's Herb Baumeister Part 2. And this is really the like, it should really be called Fox Hollow Farms, The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farms. The book is, and that's that. This is our first paranormal episode.
Yeah, I think this was a nice easing into the paranormal territory.
Yeah, nobody died due to the parent. Like no paranormal spirits killed anyone.
Yeah, they were pretty chill for now.
Yeah, so hopefully somebody enjoyed that. And we do ask that you check out our socials, our Instagram, our Twitter. It's all at Who's Knocking Podcast. Our email, hello@whosknockingpodcast.com. We would love any suggestions for cases.
Yes. Let us know if there's something you want to hear us talk about.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Because it's like, do you want to hear stuff that everybody's already talked about? Do you want to hear stuff that nobody's talked about? I want to know if people are interested in like unsolved cases,
Yeah.
missing persons cases. There's a lot of those. Oh my God. And okay, just another side note. I was looking into, so remember in the last episode, I was talking about the Missing Persons Bureau, and I was looking into that. And it led me to this big page of like all these people who were missing. And my God, that got me. That was horrifying because you just see all these pictures. There's babies, there's old people, there's
so
young
scary.
people. I clicked on one random girl, and she went missing when she was 8 months pregnant, when she was on her way to her baby shower
Oh my God. That's
in
insane.
2017. And then I
That's
was like, I can't be here.
And then it's like unsolved, right?
Unsolved, never found, just
Yeah,
missing.
those are scary.
So I think those are really important cases to cover in a true crime podcast, because those are unsolved. So you're putting out information of that case to people who may be able, like, cases have been solved that way. So I'm interested to see if other people are interested to hear about unsolved missing persons cases.
Yeah, let us know. And in
Or
general,
unsolved murders.
yeah, I think it's interesting to cover such a variety where we talk about some things that are more known, some things that are more unknown, some more detailed, some less, but we definitely want to hear feedback, so let us know.
Yeah, and I really want to do Ed Gein, and Hannah really wants to do Jeffrey Dahmer. So let us know if you're interested.
We're gonna do those episodes.
Yeah, probably we're just gonna do them.
And you will like them.
Cool. So just everyone, stay safe out there, because you never know who's knocking.
This podcast is produced in collaboration with Lost Line Media. Artwork by August Digital. Music by Matthew Cook.